Good afternoon, everybody. We'll just wait for you all to join on your videos and speakers. Just waiting on Suzanne. Is your video working, or are you watching offline? We shall see. Oh, there we go. There we go, Suzanne. I can see you now. That's much better. Great stuff. Well, thanks everyone for attending today.
I'm in a different place because, yes.
No, that's fine, Suzanne. No problem at all. No problem at all. Well, no, thanks everyone for attending. We're on a small but perfectly formed business roundtable today. So we've got our 4 members with us and our 3 members of our committee, sort of giving some advice. I think really these events that we're hosting came from the feedback from our member questionnaire that went out just before Christmas. That was really about us as a committee or chamber in Lichfield and Tamworth, giving a chance for local members to discuss and engage with each other around some key areas, and HR, branding, sort of marketing and finance were 3 of the areas that were mentioned. So it made sense to welcome Nick, Daniel and Claire with us today. Hello all. You can say hello with your mics off if that's all right. and yeah, welcome to Kyle, to Vas, to Martin and to Suzanne. So we'll go through. We won't be doing breakout rooms, so we'll go through the sort of the run of the different sort of experts discussing it. Obviously, the 4 of you on the call, please do sort of make this a 2-way discussion. We very much want to make this a way for local businesses to discuss and sort of get advice on various areas around those 3 points, and we'll go from there. For those of you who don't know, my name's Chris Bruton. I head up the chamber in Lichfield and Tamworth, and it's great to have you here today. So, in terms of how it will all work, we'll pass over to ladies first. Claire first and foremost. Claire, if you don't know, was set up Raphael Design based in Lichfield in '93, based right near the Lichfield Bridge that was crashed in again. Was it yesterday or the day before, Claire? I think I saw on Twitter. And has worked with hundreds of businesses to give first-class design, print and marketing support, and really has been a great ambassador of the chamber since joining the committee about 4 or 5 months ago, I believe, Claire. So I'll pass over to you for your sort of 3 tips. We'll then open out questions to the other 4 sort of people in the room, and obviously Nick and Dan, you can sort of give your 2 bit as well if needs be, and we'll pass it over to Claire. So over to you, Claire. Thanks.
Good morning, everybody. Chris, are we going to go around the room and just ask everyone to introduce themselves and talk
first and foremost? Great idea. Yes.
No, that's fine. I just thought it might be an opportunity for everybody to say a little bit about, their company and what they do. As Chris has already said, we're a select few, but it's quality rather than quantity that counts, as they say. So shall we hear first from Kyle? Kyle?
Yes, good morning. Thanks. My name's Kyle Raffo from Embello. We're a Tamworth-based business. We do everything creative. So similar to yourself, Claire, print, embroidery and engraving, all in-house. There's a 15,000 square foot manufacturing space we have with just over £1.5 million worth of equipment here. Our speciality is same day and next day turnaround to anywhere in the UK and also Europe when DPD arrives on time. We love connecting with local businesses. We've been rubbish at it over the last 11 years we've been around. That's why we're in the chamber, to meet local businesses who we can work alongside.
Thanks, Carl. Brilliant.
Well, thanks for coming. Martin, would you like to tell us a little about yourself? Oh, I'm sounding like Blind Date, aren't I?
I'm too old for Blind Date. Morning, everybody. My name is Martin Lahurst from Bluebird Care. It's the full title of Tamworth, Lichfield, Nuneaton and North Warwickshire. But predominantly covering Tamworth and Lichfield at the moment, and we're sort of expanding out to North Warwickshire. Been in business 2.5 years. We purchased the business from somebody else, so the actual business has been running for about 14 years. Sort of smallish, sort of 30, 35 staff. Mainly, well, it's all home care. We do a little bit of living care now. We're sort of expanding out to that a little bit as well.
Brilliant. And award-winning, Martin, after...
Oh, sorry, yeah, an award-winning small business for Lichfield and Tamworth. I shouldn't forget that, should I?
I thought you'd have your trophy with you for the rest of the year, Martin, on top of your head or something.
If I planned better, I would have done. So.
So did you go to the awards event? So yeah, it was a good night, wasn't it? And so Suzanne, a little bit about yourself.
Yes, so Suzanne Quinn. I work for Staffordshire Chamber of Commerce, but we run the Stoke-on-Trent and Staffordshire Skills Hub, which covers obviously Lichfield Tamworth area. So we work with SMEs through the area to offer business support on training, signposting to where there's training and courses, apprenticeships. But we also have a grant, so if people need some upskilling or bespoke training, then we can obviously work with companies to help with a 48% grant. So I suppose the idea of myself being here is just to promote the different services and the grants and the funding. And if there are any issues surrounding around training or learning and development, then hopefully I'll be able to help and signpost. That's it.
Great.
Okay, Claire, so over to you for your tips.
So I'll start because I know that Dan and Nick will introduce themselves as we go along. So as Chris has already said, I'm a Raphael Design. We're a graphic design agency in Lichfield. So yes, we go in the same sphere as in Bello as well. So we just put together three little tips on sort of marketing. Obviously with Carl, probably already preaching to the knowledgeable, but there you go. So my first one is we do a lot of work with clients with the use of their brand and their logo, whether that be creating it or actually getting them to use it in a consistent manner. And that is really what we aim to do with clients, to get them to give brand consistency. They may come to us with an existing logo, existing colours, but it's important that they use that throughout their range of material in a consistent basis, because it does make, particularly small companies, look a lot bigger. It can make them look more professional. And it's, okay, we're talking about logo, but we can also be talking about uses of colour, uses of font. So for example, your logo, for example, our logo has got purple in it and a lime green in it. So we would tend to use those colours obviously in our marketing, but we probably would have some secondary colours that we would use. If you maybe look at your website, you ever did your web design, there's probably some secondary colours there, and it's always good to decide on secondary colours so you can be using those, so you're getting consistency in colouring. Use of fonts as well. Obviously your logo probably has your company name, that's going to be a particular font. Probably don't necessarily want to use that font for every single thing that you do, but you would probably have decided on a font you might want to use for your titles, maybe for your body text. So again, your website will be probably using a particular font on your in your body text. But it's good to keep consistency of fonts throughout your literature. So if you have a printed thing or PDFs. And the other thing is as well is to decide as a team, if you're sending out emails or letters, everybody uses the same font. Obviously there you're going to use desktop fonts maybe, but if you all say, oh, we're all going to, and a font that's sympathetic to your branding, obviously, but then if you can get consistency as to what everybody's doing, it's conveying that same message. So it's all about getting consistency. We're very keen to work with people on that. And we do, you know, for business startups, we understand budgets can be tight, but to invest in your logo and brand at the start is a really good way to go, because then you'll end up with a set image that you can carry throughout. So that was my first little tip on use of brand and logo. Talk a little bit about text. So when you're doing a marketing piece, particularly if it's an introductory piece, less is always more, really. I know everybody has a desire, don't they, to tell everything to everybody, and that really, if you're trying to gain people's attention, they don't really want to know everything, they just want to know an introduction, and also they want to know what you can do for them, not necessarily what you do, but how you can help them. That is what is interesting to them. So it's important that anything that you produce, whether it be a leaflet or on your website, you're telling that story to the client. Not too much technical jargon, kind of that is something for future if they ask for information, and also making sure you give a clear call for action. So tell them what you want to do, give them a ring, send me an email, order this. a lot of the time marketing material goes out and it's got no call for action, and the client doesn't really know, oh, what am I supposed to do now? So make it clear to them. And as you can probably see, none of this is rocket science. I think with marketing, some of this is just common sense, but it's just bearing in mind, you know, straightforward things. You know, that's what people want to know. They want a straightforward solution. So that was my next tip. And last but not least, just a little sales tip for getting in new business. I mean, we always talk about new business, but we have been very successful. I mean, yes, we're a company that's been going quite a few years. Obviously, some of the companies have talked about the amount of time that they've been in business, but connecting with your lapsed or lost clients is a really good way to get sales in, because they're going to have already dealt with you, and it's really easy to lose connection with people. You know, so it may be there's a change in personnel, or maybe they bought something from you and they don't need that again, but they don't know what else that you do, or maybe they've just forgotten about you. So it's just a really good way of, you know, look at your database, who haven't we dealt with for a bit, and then, I mean, okay, there might be a few people on that database that you don't perhaps want to deal with for a range of reasons, but the chances are the majority of them you just need to reconnect with in some way. And it might be just a simple thing: drop them an email, send them a postcard, do something really straightforward to connect with them. And we have had some great success with that, in reconnecting with clients, and they have come back to us as a regular client. So it's definitely worth looking at that rather than just continually looking out there for new business. And that's about it.
Yeah.
There we go.
That's interesting, Claire. No, thank you. I know obviously with the announcement last night and the, you know, the sort of unlocking process hopefully is continuing, you know, apace over the next few months. And I suppose that's as important as ever on the marketing side, you know, yeah, to reconnect with those previous clients, as you say. Kyle or Martin, any thoughts on that? Any views? Martin, I know you'd mentioned that you know, you've come in and had to change sort of some of the sort of communications within your business, you know, and that was one of the reasons why you'd won the award. And Kyle, I know you're sort of in the process of changing with the new move. So yeah, any thoughts on that, either of Kyle or Martin?
Yes, Chris.
Go on, Kyle.
We'll go with Martin first, just because he's on my left. Or Kyle.
Right, okay.
Martin first.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. Yeah, very interesting. We're part of a franchise business. There's just over 200 offices around the country. So we've got Martin expertise there. We've just done a brand refresh, actually, where they've added, I think it's orange colour into it. Done all the testing and everything. So the marketeers have told us all the spiel, and that's what they've gone with. Predominantly blue, though. What's one of the reasons I've joined the call, though, is we sort of do local marketing as well. So even printing leaflets, and we're looking at a sign outside the office and things. So we're looking at local business. We're going to start looking at local businesses to do that for us. And then I sort of got a good relationship with a number of other offices around sort of the Midlands area, Stafford and Walsall, etc. So you know, if one of us finds a good I'll say a good deal or a good business to work with, then you know, we sort of spread the word, really. So so hopefully I shall. I've already got Claire's and Kyle's details written down. So you know, as and when we're ready to do some marketing or even just printing and stuff, hopefully we'll be in touch. So
Good stuff, Martin. Yeah, that's good to hear. And yeah, I suppose, as you say, that branding is through the head office side, but still important to you as a business, I'm sure. So no, thanks, Martin. Appreciate that. Kyle, you wanted to bring you in, and we've just had Pete from PhD, so we'll come on to you in a sec. Pete, how are you doing? You okay? Kyle, over to you.
Cheers, Chris. Yeah, just to I guess jump on some of the points Claire made. The first one is talking about sort of product, and the way I always put it to people when it comes to marketing is they're not buying, for example, a branded t-shirt from us. They're turning their staff into walking billboards, and it's about looking at that end result. What does your product actually enable people to do? And it's a different way of marketing your product, but it's a very successful way of doing it. That was the first one. The second point is, Claire mentioned postcards. We use them every single day in our business, quite literally just to say thank you. Dropping postcards, handwritten, to say thank you to a customer, thank you for a referral, or even nice to meet you. they're so successful and really cheap, and actually a quick, easy, affordable way to connect and encourage touch points with clients. So some excellent points made, Claire. I've scribbled down a few notes. Thank you for those.
Good stuff. Brilliant. And Suzanne, Pete, we'll come on to you in a moment. I know you've just joined. So, Suzanne, any thoughts from you? I suppose, yeah, yours is constantly changing in the current circumstances around your brand, but I suppose still a discussion to be had there.
Yeah, it is, and it's interesting. We when we set up as a skills hub, we had to start everything from scratch, from our brand, everything. But we had to use the colours, and we got given. If you can hear my son in the background, I do apologise, but he's occupying himself, but noisily. So we were given the short list and a long list of colours. So we knew which ones we had to use for the key focus, but then we also knew we could only use certain ones, and it was to line up in with the LEP and with the growth hub, but look different. So that was something that we were obviously had to use, but everything that we use, we have to have the ESF logo as well, which is obviously going to go through a period of change over the next 12 months or so, depending on, well, we've got the ESF funding until 2023, but I'm assuming what we have to do with our brand and how we market and things like that may have to change over the next few years. So it's going to be an interesting time to watch, really. I don't know how it's going to impact everybody.
Thanks, Suzanne. No, that's a fair point. And yeah, and I suppose, yeah, that awareness and understanding of what you offer as a business is key. Oh, I think she's just gone off. Okay, no worries. If we bring in Pete. Pete, you just joined us. Just quickly give yourself an introduction, and then we'll wrap up and we'll take over to Nick. So Pete, over to you.
Morning, everybody, or afternoon, everybody. Sorry I was late. I got held up on a previous one. I know that's a well-used excuse. True. So yes, some of you may have heard of us, some of you may not. My name's Peter Howard. I run a business called PhD Design in Lichfield. We're in our 29th year now, and we are a design and branding company. So we do the creative input that goes into making people's businesses look as good as they should do. As Claire will know, if you make a company look as good as it actually is, then they'll do well. There's many companies out there that are actually brilliant, but they look like a bag of. So if they look rubbish, then they're just going to get rubbish. So you need to look good. So we've been making companies look good for thick end of 30 years, and hopefully going to carry on doing that for an awful long time. So that's in a nutshell. That's us. We make companies look good.
Good stuff. No, thanks, Pete. Appreciate that. And yeah, and I think you're catching Claire up on the years in business. You're about, I think, 1 year difference or 2 years. I'm not sure. Is that about right?
I remember using Pete when he had the shop in Erdington.
Oh wow, there you go.
All those years ago. So
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I'd like to say I started as a child, but it's not quite true.
I love it. No, that's great. Thanks, Pete. I appreciate that. And thanks, Claire. Some really good points. And I say, picking those points up, I think is really what this lunchtime is all about. So great stuff. Thank you very much, Claire. We'll go over to Nick now, then on the finance side of things. So a bit of an about turn in terms of what you do, Nick. But I think certainly since you joined the chamber sort of committee, it's probably 12, just over 12 months ago, isn't it? It's amazing some of the projects that you work on and some of the areas. So I'm just going to get your slide up in front of me, and we'll go from there. So just bear with me 1 second.
Well, whilst Chris is doing that, the slide isn't earth-shattering, but I'm an engineer by trade. 20 odd years in the utilities industries and defence and all sorts of places. And I happened across a regime for giving companies tax relief for anything they do that would qualify as research and development. And what I have found over the years is that very, very few people seem to be aware, and those that are aware seem to self-censor and go, oh, what we do isn't R&D. And you may be right, but from my perspective, point number one, don't guess, ask an expert. I'm more than happy to talk to anyone about anything really, but particularly R&D, and help them understand how the regime works, and yeah, they may have an opportunity to use it, they may not. They may grow the business and go, well, actually, you know what, we could use this, or they may know people who could use it. In simple terms, it was a little bit of an illustration. If you spent £10,000 on work that was eligible, clearly you will deduct those costs as you're calculating your annual profit. HMRC would then allow you to deduct another 130%, so you could deduct another 13 grand, which I think works out, so you save yourself about 2.5 grand extra on your corporation tax. It's not restricted to profit-making companies. You can be loss-making companies, and you can still benefit from the relief. So yeah, when people ask, how much can I get? That's a really open-ended question. I'm finding that typically I'm saving people about 10% of their corporation tax bill. So the second point there, be realistic. Not everybody's doing R&D. Not everybody understands how the regime might apply to them, and it is much broader than perhaps you might think. When you look at the statistics that are published annually, you find claims from healthcare companies, agriculture. Obviously, the tech companies feature quite highly because they're developing it. But I write a note down here. We've done claims for Blue Crest Healthcare. We've done claims for L&T Software, and L&T Software actually developed software for care homes. So you never know where you might find eligibility. And in terms of not self-censoring, realistically, I can tell you in less than half an hour whether I think there's a realistic prospect of you having eligible R&D. And the way the regime works, once your claim has been submitted, typically HMRC look to turn an SME claim round in 28 days. They're not doing that at the moment. Apparently they have other constraints like CBILS and self-employment income support, so they're a bit busy. But it still comes down to, if there is a realistic claim, then depending upon the timing of your accounts, we could actually help your cash flow inside 3 months. And the way I work is I won't take a fee unless you get something back from the revenue. And I think that's quite important because, quite often people, they look at what opportunities could exist, and then immediately, not only do they self-censor on, we don't do R&D, they self-censor on, it'll cost too much. Mm-hmm. And I think it's quite important to help people, particularly the SMEs and the startups, to access the knowledge that they can use later on. Mm-hmm. And I think the other really important point is, don't assume your accountant knows about R&D. It's a bit like expecting your GP to know about the inner workings of cancers. You need a consultant. I've actually got a partnering relationship with Grant McKnight down in Sutton Coldfield. They look after the accounting. They make referrals to me, and if we have eligible R&D, then I work with them, because unless you're in kind of the Big 4, Big 5 territory, then your accountant probably isn't living and breathing R&D. I live and breathe R&D, so I will be able to give good advice and also be able to work with your accountant in terms of, particularly startups, about how you structure things and how you make provision in what you capture to help you support your claim.
Okay.
So it is a very niche area. As Chris said, I've seen some fantastic things. I was actually asked a question on a call last week, the week before, what the most interesting bit of the project I'd covered in R&D, and I have to be honest, I had to decline the question because it just wasn't for public consumption. But we've done things like the heating and ventilating systems over Chernobyl, blast containment in nuclear facilities, waste to energy plants, carbon fiber hockey sticks, carbon fiber brake ducts, healthcare software. The list goes on.
And I think that's the thing that I've found when I've been talking to you, Nick, is that it isn't necessarily always the areas you'd expect to have those requirements. So no, definitely worth giving it some thought. Definitely.
I've got the guidelines in front of me, and typically what they're doing is that they say, you are looking to have a tangible improvement. So more efficient cleaning, process that generates less waste, or you can just do things cheaper. Yeah.
That's interesting. No, thanks, Nick. I really appreciate that. And just wanted to obviously bring in people on the questions. Is there any of you, sort of on the call? Kyle, I think you've got your hand up there just to get to it, and then after that, probably Pete.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Perfect time actually to have this conversation. As a business we've been exploring, it's really interesting to hear some thoughts. Sort of a slight sidebar. Aside from this business, I invest in several different businesses and startups. I've just invested in fantastic medical supplies businesses, as broad as I probably keep it at the moment. And there's lots of R&D going on. And we've just invested significantly, or I'm about to invest significantly in one specific product. So would love a chat further. My question is, Nick, is as a startup, our expenditure will far strip our sales in year one. How does that impact this as is it purely a tax credit, or is it a payment back to you?
If you are loss making, you are able to surrender. So typically, the examples are: you make a profit, you identify R&D, you reduce your profit, and therefore you've reduced your corporation tax. That's quite an easy one. If you are loss making and you have no tax liability, then you are able to surrender a proportion of your R&D expenditure. So you get 14.5%, and that would become payable as a cash credit. So for companies that are startups and are perhaps cash poor, there is a conversation to be had with me, the accountant, the business, and so strategically, how do you want to take this benefit? Because if for sake of argument, we take a company that, and I've got one, he's bouncing around between profit and loss making, he may benefit from holding on to his losses until he hits significant profit. If he's always going to be bouncing around being loss making, he's probably better off taking the cash. So
yes, that balance, isn't it, between the two sort of situations.
You need to think about your forecasting, because if your medical supplies you think is going to go 2 years and be investing significantly and be loss making for a number of years, then you go, I'd probably take the cash. If you think you're going to have a significant step in the next 2 years, you might go, well, actually, if I have sufficient cash, I could probably survive and then take a larger benefit in 2 years' time.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And
there's a strategic decision to be made.
The business is cash rich, so it's not sort of a cash issue. It's merely a how can we maximise any savings.
Yeah, and absolutely. So that will be the conversation to have, around the table with the accountant. Say, right, you're cash rich. What are your R&D allowable costs, and how can we get the most from what we've assessed?
Excellent. There's a one-to-one to be booked there.
There we go. Great stuff. Thanks, Carl. Brilliant. And appreciate that. And Pete, I think you wanted to come in. Was that?
I was just going to say that we did it for the first time last year, I think it was. And
okay. Yeah.
it was something that I'd never considered before. I didn't realise that we could get any claims back for research and development, bearing in mind that what we do is basically create things on behalf of our clients. But we managed to get, broadly, Nick, 10% of our corporation tax, as it happens, roughly.
Yeah.
We managed to get that back, and there was, if I'm brutally honest, there was quite a lot of paperwork that we had to do, but it's the kind of paperwork that you've just got to collate it to one place. And for someone like me, admin is a ball ache, so I hate it. So it's a necessary one, but I did it. And when you're talking about 10% of your corporation tax, you suck it up and you do it because it's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a good point there. The revenue don't expect you to keep records specifically targeted at R&D, and they appreciate that every business has different data requirements for management accounting.
Yeah.
But they do expect you to make best use of what you've got. And sometimes we do end up advising people. Actually, we need to improve the data capture, particularly around the evidence side of things, because you look at. I said last week it wasn't a slow week, but I was reading some of the first tier tribunal judgments, just looking at how the revenue are not so much targeting, but how they are approaching what they require. And lack of evidence is quite often what kills the claim. And that, particularly for startups, is a good place to get in. So I was talking to someone last week, he's like, I don't want you to do timesheets because for the size of business, it's just not practical. But we do need to have some kind of roadmap about what it is you're trying to do, what activities you're doing, so that we can evidence
to make that record
to the revenue where what journey you're on, and to try and support the proportion of people's time that you think you are spending on R&D.
Okay, good stuff. No, thanks, Nick. That's really good. Brilliant. Thanks, Nick. Wonderful. No, that's great. And I just wanted to bring, if there's Martin or Suzanne. Martin, yeah, there we go.
I'll just get myself off mute. Nick, it's something I've not even thought about before, so I appreciate a quick conversation just to either rule it in or rule it out. Chris, would you be able to circulate everybody's contact details?
Yeah, we'll send that over on the thing. If you put it in there, if everyone wants to put the information in the chat, but yeah, we'll certainly we can make those connections if need be.
I've just got Claire's, but yeah, be interested to get Carl's and Nick's certainly, and Suzanne's as well. So, and then anybody else that's
forget everyone to put it in the chat. If you put that in the chat now, that's great, and we'll if there's any further follow-ons, we can do that as well. So great stuff. And I just wanted to bring Suzanne in last, I suppose, from the skills side. Suzanne, you're probably at the starting point in terms of encouraging businesses to take up funding to I suppose use some of these that will eventually require that R&D support, perhaps.
Yes, so it depends on what stage the business is at and what they ask for. It's not an area that I'm 100% familiar with, so it was really interesting to hear it in more of a layman's term, I suppose, in a basic understanding. So we do get companies who ask about training in tax or and different things, and I know things are coming on board as a training provider to offer some form of different training in tax and things like that, more geared towards other accountancy or people who are qualified in that area. I suppose what Nickel businesses are wanting it are people who are financially minded. They just want to take that business in that direction to obviously try and save money and fit it into the business plan, isn't it, rather than the accountancy side of things. So no, it's definitely interesting. I think it's something we could refer people to.
Wonderful. Okay, brilliant. No, thanks. Yeah, if everyone does put their contact details in, that's great. I see people are doing it now, and that's really interesting. No, thanks, Nick. Really appreciate it. And again, yeah, definitely worth picking up with some of the people on the call. That sounds good. So we move on to Daniel now, who sat very quietly in the top right corner of my screen. Very well. I imagine your puppy is now going to start jumping and shouting and barking as we chuckled about before we started. But Dan, over to you. Good to see you. Over to you.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So hi everyone, my name is Daniel. I'm from a company called Access Bookings. We're based in Lichfield, and we're a bespoke booking agency on behalf of the TV and film industry. I myself work as part of the HR team, so just here today just to give you some top tips for HR going into 2021. Obviously, I think the biggest thing at the moment is obviously, businesses have been really impacted by the pandemic, and like ourselves, a lot of staff are on furlough, so it's sort of making arrangements really for when people start to come back to work. A big trend this year, because obviously now businesses know that we can all work from home quite effectively. A big trend coming through is that hybrid approach to working, so working from home, but also having some time in the office as well. So my tip for that really is just to sort of, have a think about your hybrid working policies, and see whether that's something you want to roll out across your businesses. What I would say is sort of make sure that you're setting the same standard for everybody across the board, just to make it fair. And also set out really what your expectations are of people, whether that be, if you want a minimum of 2 days a week in the office, or a minimum of 3 days a week at home, whatever. Just make sure that message is perfectly clear across the board to everybody. I think another thing as well that you probably need to sort of focus on is your communication channels as well. People can feel detached when they are working from home, but obviously if you've got a certain amount of people working in the office and other members working at home, just make sure that your communication is sort of spot on really. So whether that be daily handovers, whether it be constant communication through Teams or Zoom, or whether you sort of jump on, conference calls and things throughout the day, just to keep each other in the loop of things. So next one is mental health. This has been a real big thing that we've had to sort of be mindful of over the last few years, but even more throughout the pandemic. Again, with people working from home, there is that feeling of detachment. So it's just making sure that you are keeping in touch with your staff if you have got them on furlough, and if you've got them working from home as well, just engage in regular communication with people. Have conversations, even just if you need to start a conversation with a how are you, just to get the ball rolling really. There are quite a few signs of what to look out for when you can feel that people might be going down a route of experiencing poor mental health. So looking out for things like people working long hours or not taking a break. You might see elements of people withdrawing from their work, so that's another sign to look out for. Overreacting, something that might be a reaction that you would expect normally from somebody. They might overreact because they're experienced from poor mental health. And distraction, working from home is distracting. As Chris said, my dog seems to bark at the right time just for me to jump on things like this. Luckily, she's asleep at the moment. I think the walk this morning really helped. But yeah, just making sure that people are going to have those elements of distraction, but also just keeping an eye on that as well, just to make sure that people are engaged and focused. So making sure that people have got a clear understanding of what's expected of them, especially when they're working from home. I'd also sort of suggest as well looking at your EAP, and any sort of, if you've got any mental health ambassadors and things like that. There's lots of support out there, sort of documents and support from Mind and other charities similar to that are really useful for people to share with staff, if you need to use that. So my last thing is looking at diversity and inclusion. So I think that in times gone by, people have probably just seen this as a bit of a tick box exercise to say that they've got it. I think it's something now that businesses need to focus on, embedding that into your day-to-day business decisions that you make. So looking at sort of ethical suppliers, making sure that that business is living and breathing your policies. A lot of new candidates into businesses now are looking for ethical businesses and real clear-cut policies surrounding inclusion. So it's a deal breaker really to sort of get that new talent into your business as well. Not a tip, but obviously just wanted to obviously share the furlough scheme is coming to an end at the moment. At the end of April, we are sort of waiting to hear a little bit more information from the Chancellor next week when he announces the budget. And just touching back on the working from home, I've tried to look through the guidance that we've had from the government. There's not anything really clear cut, but looking at it, I think that the guidance is to continue working from home as much as possible until that 21st of June point when the world will just go mad and we can all cartwheel out of our front doors. So, you know, keep in touch with what's sort of, you know, coming through and the latest guidance.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Great stuff. Any questions from anyone in the room around Dan? I know really interesting business access bookings, and obviously, you know, an interesting sort of reaction and effects from the, you know, from the coronavirus sort of crisis as well. But any thoughts or feedback on any of those points from Dan?
The only thing that I would add is that we've had a lot of companies who are looking at putting people through in their workplace. So you have your first aiders, but we can actually fund for people to become mental health first aiders in the workplace. So a lot of companies are taking that up as an offer because they feel it's important to have those people in place. But also they're doing more courses for well-being as groups, so all of the staff, particularly if they're bringing staff back from furlough, so if they're bringing people back in, how to help them transition back into it, because this sort of working for us in Zoom and Teams or whatever, we've sort of all had to learn as we've gone along, and we were sort of thrown in the deep end back in March, but it's coming up to a year, we're sort of all quite good at it. I mean, don't forget, we all forget to mute and unmute and all the rest of it, but in terms of the actual process or the familiar, you know, using the system, whereas if you've been on furlough and you're coming in and this is the way that it's working, it's a very, very different environment, and to suddenly come back into it. So it's making that transition and working with them. And so we're getting a lot more managers doing well-being courses on how to look after their staff, make sure that the staff are okay. A lot of managers have been managers for say 20, 30 years. They've never, well, no one's obviously experienced this at all, but they've never necessarily had to make redundancies. You know, they've never had to make difficult decisions. They've never necessarily lost big clients before and things like that out of their control. And so it's managing those situations and managing their mental health, but also managing their staff and the staff that are left behind, making sure that they're happy. And I think that's the biggest investment that you've got to do is if you are going through redundancies, is looking after the well-being of the staff that are left behind, because there's that mentality, is the next call, is the next meeting going to be me going? And it's trying to eliminate that. So there's definitely a lot of training and support that is out there, but it's got to be set up by the managers, I suppose. It's got to be taken by the business leaders to take those leads, and some are good at it and some obviously they don't necessarily see it as a priority, or it seems as a cost, which it is, but the return on investment I think obviously outweighs that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think Dan, you mentioned that, didn't you, in your business, how important that is as people are coming back and off furlough. I know there's a lot of people on furlough in access at the moment.
I think it's just changing mindsets, isn't it? Really, you know, people that like you say, have been off work since last March, and you know, you've not been expected to turn up and be able to do a day's work. So it's that transition in. And again, if you have gone through a redundancy process, there's a lot of research about survivor syndrome, where people, you know, the people that are left behind, and looking at another thing to sort of do a bit of researching is the change curve model as well, of looking at how people react to change as well. And that's really important to understand where people are at on that curve model and how you can kind of guide and help them through that transition period, because a lot of the time businesses are going to look completely different when they come back to what they were when they left back in March.
Absolutely. No, thanks, Dan. Martin, I saw your hand up. Did you want to ask a question?
No, I was just going to back up what they just said. We're fortunate enough to have not really been suffering throughout the pandemic, obviously being a home care business, some peaks and troughs, but the mental health of the staff is crucial, really. We work with a company called Krona, a HR company. They've got a mental health and support line, which is anonymous. We don't get involved with the staff, but we fund that for them. And I do know that quite a few of them have rang up and sort of taken some help and advice, really. Yeah, crucial to get people through it.
And again, I'm sure in Martin, in your sort of line of work, there's a different effect on people's mental health, isn't there? That's a different aspect, but still just as important.
Exactly, yeah. And you don't know what's affecting people, whether it's work related or something outside of work. That it all affects their working life. So you need to support them where you can.
Absolutely. Any other questions from anyone in the room? Kyle, Pete? All okay on that now? I think that's good. I think we'll certainly end with the positive that on the back of yesterday's announcement, at least Dan has got some dates that he can work to in terms of travel and all the rest of it, fingers crossed. But I know, I suppose that's the positive aspect, is that we do at least seem to be on our way out some way. And as you said, Dan, as people return, that's the next challenge from a HR point of view, isn't it? But at least we're perhaps able to look at that in a little bit better way, with the budget announcement on March the 3rd being absolutely vital on the furlough scheme, isn't it? I think, again, that just shows how different things are. So, Dan, any final thoughts from you? And or you all okay?
Yeah, all good. Yeah, it's just, like I say, really positive news yesterday, wasn't it? Really just to get all that sorted. But yeah, I think touching, mental health is a really good thing to sort of focus on, and making sure that you've got those EAPs in place, and promoting those as well. Some people might be in a business where they don't know that that's what you offer. So, as well as your marketing is really good, looking after your staff internally as well is just as important. So, make sure you're promoting internally as well, that you've got these services available for people.
Great stuff. Okay. Well, no, thanks everybody. That was really interesting. It's good to see. I think we didn't need another 20 people, or that would have gone on for 5 hours. So I think people really engaged, really positive. It's good to see that there's some new connections and links. If there's any other business, raise your hand. Other than that, we'll leave it there. I think everyone okay. Thanks to our speakers, Claire, Nick, and Dan. Thanks to our fellow roundtable discussions, Kyle, Martin. I almost call you PhD then, Pete, and Suzanne. And we'll look forward to seeing you all again soon. I really appreciate your support on the event. If you've got the contact details, if you do click the 3 dots on the right-hand side, you can save the chat, and that'll automatically save it into a document, so you can pick up those contact details if needs be. If you do need a connection outside of the call, get in touch, and we can do that ourselves as well. And I think that's everything from everyone. So thanks so much again. Really appreciate your time, everybody. Look forward to seeing you soon. Maybe in person in about 6 months' time. We never know, on the 22nd. And we'll speak soon. But thanks so much, everybody. Appreciate your time.
Thanks very much, guys.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Chris.
Bye.
So, bye now.